The envelope was cold in my hands, a stark white rectangle against the warm wood of my kitchen table. It felt heavier than it should, weighted not by paper, but by the dread coiling in my stomach. My name and address were printed in a sharp, unfamiliar font. It wasn't a bill, it wasn't a friendly letter, it was from a law firm in a city I hadn't visited in years. My hands trembled slightly as I tore it open. The words inside were legal, precise, and utterly insane. They spoke of parental responsibility, of arrears, of a child named Marco. My son. A son I had never met, never held, never even known existed. The letter demanded over $50,000 in retroactive child support and established an ongoing monthly payment that would bleed my retirement account dry. Pinned to the top was a photograph. A small boy with dark, luminous eyes and a shy smile, standing in a sunny park somewhere far, far away. He was beautiful, and he looked nothing like me. My world, which had already been shattered once by loss, began to fracture all over again. I sank into my chair, the letter crinkling in my fist. How could this be? I had a child, or so they claimed. It was a lie. It had to be a lie. But a part of me, a small terrified part, wondered if the biggest lie was the one I'd been telling myself for the past 3 years. This story is a difficult one to tell. It's a journey into a darkness I never knew existed, a testament to how loneliness can blind even the most careful of men. If you've ever felt lost or taken advantage of, or if you simply want to see how this impossible situation unfolds, please consider subscribing to the channel. Your support means we can continue to share these important, real-life stories. My name is Arthur, and when this story began, I was 56 years old. My life, once a vibrant tapestry woven with love and shared dreams, had become a monochrome sketch of solitude. 3 years prior, I had lost my wife Eleanor to a battle with cancer that she fought with a grace I still struggle to comprehend. We'd been married for 30 years. 30 years of laughter echoing through our Seattle home, of shared coffee on rainy mornings, of building a life together piece by piece. We never had children of our own. It was a quiet sadness we carried together, but we had filled our lives with each other, with travel, with friends, with our work. I was an architect, and she was a landscape designer. We built beautiful spaces for others, and our own home was our sanctuary. After she was gone, that sanctuary became a museum of memories. Her favourite mug still sat on the shelf. Her gardening gloves were still on the back porch, dusted with the soil of her last spring. The silence in the house was a physical presence, a heavy blanket that suffocated me. My friends tried. They invited me for dinner, for golf, for weekends away. I would go, put on a brave face, and feel like a ghost at the feast. I was there, but the real me, the Arthur that existed with Eleanor, had died with her. I was a hollow man, rattling around in a life that was too big for one person. The loneliness wasn't just an emotion, it was my environment. It was the air I breathed, the food I tasted, the cold side of the bed I felt every single night. I knew I needed to do something, to find a spark, any spark, to relight my world. It was in that state of quiet desperation, of profound, aching loneliness, that I did something I never thought I would do. I logged on to an international dating website. Her name was Angelita, but she told me to call her Lena. Her profile picture showed a woman in her late 20s standing on a beach with the sunset painting the sky behind her in hues of orange and purple. She had a smile that could disarm armies, bright and genuine, with eyes that seemed to hold a universe of dreams. She was from the Philippines. Her profile was modest, well written. She spoke of her love for art, her dream of becoming a graphic designer, and her desire to find a partner who valued honesty and kindness above all else. She wasn't looking for a ticket to a new country, she wrote, but a true connection of the heart. To a man drowning in solitude, her words were a life raft. I sent a hesitant first message complimenting her on her art portfolio, which she had linked. Her reply came within hours. It was warm, intelligent, and inquisitive. She asked me about my work as an architect, about the buildings I had designed. She wasn't just replying, she was engaging. For the first time in 3 years, I felt a flicker of something other than grief. I felt seen. We moved from emails to daily chats, and then to video calls that stretched late into my nights and filled her mornings. Her voice was like honey, soft and sweet, and her laughter was infectious. She would show me the view from her small apartment in Manila, the bustling street below, the vibrant chaos of her world. She told me about her family in a rural province, how she sent money home every month to support her parents and younger siblings. She was shouldering so much responsibility with such grace. I found myself admiring her, this young woman with a will of iron and a heart of gold. I told her about Eleanor, about my grief, about the crushing weight of my quiet life. She listened with a patience that felt like a balm on my soul. She didn't offer platitudes, she offered presence. She made me feel less like a widower and more like a man again. A man who could still be desired, still be loved. I was falling, and I was falling fast. I didn't see it as a 56-year-old man falling for a 28-year-old woman. I saw it as a lonely soul finding its counterpart. The trust between us felt absolute, forged in the digital space between two continents, a pure connection of spirit. Or so I believed. The acceleration was intoxicating. Within a month, I like you had blossomed into I love you. The words felt true on my lips, a sentiment I thought had been buried with Eleanor. Lena said them back with an earnestness that melted any skepticism I might have had. We were in love. It was a whirlwind romance conducted through a screen, but it felt more real than anything in my physical world. I started my days with her good morning message and ended them with her image on my laptop, her voice a lullaby as I drifted off to sleep. I was making plans. I looked at visa requirements, at flights. I imagined her here, in my home, filling the silence with her laughter, her presence turning this house back into a home. The first red flag appeared so subtly I barely noticed it. It was cloaked in the guise of a problem I could solve, a way for me to be her hero. She was struggling with her design work, she said, because her old laptop was slow and kept crashing. It was affecting her freelance jobs, the very income she used to support her family. My heart went out to her. Of course I could help. I sent her $2,000 for a new, top-of-the-line machine. The gratitude that poured from her was overwhelming. I was her saviour, her angel. The feeling was addictive. A few weeks later, her mother fell ill. It was a recurring theme, her family's fragile health. This time, it was a severe infection, and they couldn't afford the hospital bills. She was distraught, crying on our video call, feeling helpless so far away in the city. "Please, Arthur," she sobbed, "I don't know what to do." I didn't hesitate. I wired $5,000. The money wasn't the point. It was about easing her pain, about being the man who could protect her and her family. Each time I sent money, the bond between us seemed to deepen, our futures weaving together more tightly. I was no longer just her boyfriend. I was her partner, her provider. It felt noble. It felt right. I dismissed the small, nagging voice in the back of my head that whispered a warning. The voice that noted how her video would conveniently freeze whenever I asked to speak to her mother directly, or how the specific details of her design projects were always vague. I was in love, and love, I told myself, required trust. Love meant helping the one you love without question. I was building a future with her, and this was just laying the foundation. My emotional dependency on Lena grew exponentially. She became the sun around which my lonely planet orbited. My mood for the day was dictated by the tone of her morning text. If she was happy, I was ecstatic. If she was stressed, I was consumed with finding a solution. I had outsourced my happiness to a woman half a world away, and I didn't even realize it. My financial support, which had started as occasional gifts, slowly morphed into a regular, structured allowance. It began with me offering to cover her rent so she could focus on her art without financial stress. That was $700 a month. Then came the money for her family, another $500. Then came funds for business courses and software licenses. I was investing in her, I reasoned. I was investing in us. My semi-retirement fund, which I had so carefully cultivated over a lifetime, began to shrink, but I barely noticed. I was high on the feeling of being needed, of being essential to someone's life and dreams. She talked about our future with such vivid detail. She described the children we would have, how she would teach them to speak Tagalog, how I would teach them to appreciate architecture. The idea of being a father, a dream I had long ago packed away, was reawakened. At 56, the thought was both terrifying and exhilarating. One night, during a particularly emotional video call, I proposed. I hadn't even bought a ring. I just held my heart out to her through the screen, and she accepted with tears of joy streaming down her face. We were engaged. A few months later, I flew to Manila to meet her in person. The week was a blur of passion and manufactured perfection. She was even more beautiful in person. But looking back, it was all carefully curated. I never met her family. They were too far away in the province, and her mother was still too frail to travel. I never saw her apartment as we stayed in a luxury hotel that I paid for. We were in a bubble, a perfect fantasy world for 7 days. 2 months after I returned to the States, she called me, her voice a mix of terror and joy. She was pregnant. My heart leapt. It was happening. Our dream was coming true. The distance, the money, the red flags I had ignored. It was all worth it. I was going to be a father. The pregnancy was, from the start, a drama played out over thousands of miles. There were constant complications, medical scares that always seemed to require expensive treatments at private clinics. I never questioned the bills she sent, the photos of ultrasounds that were just fuzzy, anonymous shapes. I was too caught up in the fantasy. My son. Our son. She told me she wanted to name him Marco after her grandfather. I loved it. I started converting my home office into a nursery, buying a crib, painting the walls a soft, hopeful blue. Then came the blow. She couldn't get a visa to travel to the US while pregnant. There were complications with her paperwork and a backlog at the embassy. We would have to wait until after the baby was born. I was disappointed but resolute. I would go there as soon as he arrived. Marco was born in the spring of 2021. Lena sent me a photo from the hospital bed, holding a tiny, swaddled bundle. I wept with joy. I was a father. I sent $10,000 to cover the hospital costs and to ensure they had everything they needed. For the next 2 years, I parented through a screen. I watched Marco grow in photos and short video clips. He was a beautiful boy. I sang him lullabies over the phone. I sent monthly support that was more than generous, covering a nanny, a better apartment, clothes, toys, everything a child could need. My conversations with Lena became less about us and more about the logistics of money. She grew distant, her explanations for why I couldn't visit, always plausible but always present. A typhoon, a new COVID variant, Marco's fragile immune system. The excuses piled up. Then the calls became less frequent. My messages would go unread for days. The financial requests became more demanding, more aggressive. The warmth was gone, replaced by a cold sense of transaction. I felt a growing unease, a sickness in my gut. And then the envelope arrived. The one from the lawyer. It wasn't a request from Lena. It was a formal legal action, filed in my own country. It claimed I had abandoned my child and demanded a fortune. The bubble didn't just pop, it exploded. My friend David, a pragmatic lawyer I had known since college, looked at the letter, at the photo of Marco, and then at me. "Arthur," he said gently, "you need to get a DNA test." I recoiled. Betray Lena? Doubt my own son? It felt monstrous. But the doubt was a poison that had already seeped into my veins. With a heavy heart, I agreed. My lawyer arranged for a court-admissible test, a complex process involving a certified lab in Manila. Weeks later, another envelope arrived. This one contained not a demand, but the truth. I opened it, my hands shaking. And there it was, in cold, scientific certainty. Probability of paternity, 0%. He was not my son. He had never been my son. The entire foundation of my life for the past 3 years crumbled into dust. It's a brutal thing to have your heart broken by love. It's another thing entirely to discover that the love itself was a meticulously crafted lie. The shame was a physical weight pressing down on my chest, making it hard to breathe. Have you ever known someone who fell into a trap like this, blinded by hope or loneliness? I'd be grateful if you shared your thoughts in the comments below, and if you're finding value in this story, please subscribe. It helps more than you know. The confrontation was a sterile, soulless affair conducted over a crackling phone line. There was no tearful confession, no apology. When I told her the results of the DNA test, there was a moment of dead silence. And then, the pivot. The gentle, loving Lena I thought I knew vanished, replaced by a venomous stranger. "How dare you!" she shrieked, her voice sharp and ugly. "You are trying to abandon your son. That test is a fake. You paid someone to fake it." She accused me of being a monster, a cruel old man using his money to manipulate the truth and shirk his responsibilities. The performance was breathtaking in its audacity. I was stunned into silence. Then the threats began. "I will tell everyone," she hissed. "I will post on social media. I will create websites. I will show them your picture, tell them your name. The whole world will know Arthur Penwright is a deadbeat dad who abandoned his sick child in the Philippines." The blackmail was explicit. She and her lawyer, she explained, would drop the lawsuit and disappear from my life for a one-time payment of $250,000. It was a ransom for my reputation, for my peace of mind. The pressure was immense. My lawyer advised me that fighting it would be a public, messy and expensive battle. Part of me, the exhausted, humiliated part, just wanted to pay it. I wanted to write the check and make the nightmare go away. I couldn't sleep, I barely ate. I was trapped in a state of constant anxiety, a prisoner of my own monumental foolishness. The legal threats were one thing, but the public shaming was another. I imagined my name dragged through the mud, my old colleagues and friends reading slanderous posts online. The woman I had poured my heart and my savings into was now threatening to systematically destroy my life. I had lost control. I was no longer a man in love or even a victim of a scam. I was a hostage. Every ping of my phone sent a jolt of adrenaline through me, expecting another threat, another demand. My quiet, orderly life had descended into a chaotic hell of my own making. The breaking point came late one night. I was sitting in the dark in the living room, staring at a framed photograph of Eleanor and me on the mantel. We were on a trip to Italy, years ago, both of us smiling, genuinely happy. I looked at the man in that photo, confident, content, secure in a love that was real. And I looked at myself now, a shell of that man, hunched in the dark, terrified of a phantom family and a digital predator. Eleanor would have been horrified, not at my gullibility, but at how I had let myself shrink, how I had allowed this person to steal not just my money, but my dignity. In that moment, something shifted. The shame began to burn away, replaced by a slow-burning rage. Not just at Lena, but at myself. I had let my loneliness make me a willing participant in my own destruction. I would not let my fear make me a willing hostage. I would not pay the ransom. This was not about money anymore. This was about reclaiming my life, my name, and the memory of the man I used to be. The next morning, I called my lawyer, David. My voice was steady for the first time in weeks. "We're not settling," I said. We fight. We fight with everything we have. I don't care what it costs or how public it gets. We expose this, all of it." It was a declaration of war, a rebellion against the prison of fear she had built around me. The decision wasn't an escape in the physical sense. I wasn't running away. I was running toward the conflict. I was choosing to stand in the storm and fight back. It was the most terrifying decision I'd ever made, and also the most liberating. I was finally taking back control. The legal battle was as brutal as my lawyer predicted. It was a war of attrition, fought with motions, depositions, and affidavits across international lines. Her legal team was aggressive, painting me as a wealthy American who had preyed on a vulnerable young woman, promised her a future, and then callously discarded her and her child when he grew bored. They used the photos I had been sent, the loving emails I had written, as evidence against me. They twisted my love into a weapon, But the truth, backed by the undeniable science of a DNA test, was my shield. My legal team worked tirelessly, gathering evidence of the financial transactions, uncovering inconsistencies in her story, and ultimately proving a pattern of calculated fraud. After nearly a year of emotional and financial drain, the court ruled in my favour. The case was dismissed. The threats of public shaming evaporated as her own lies were laid bare. I had won. But it felt like a hollow victory. The financial cost was staggering, but the emotional cost was immeasurable. I had won the battle, but I was left with the wreckage. I sold the big house, the museum of memories that held ghosts of both Eleanor and Lina. It was too full of silence and regret. I bought a smaller condo in the city, a place with no history, a blank canvas. I started therapy, forcing myself to confront the profound loneliness that had made me such an easy target. I had to learn the difference between being alone and being lonely. I had to learn to find value in myself, not in someone else's affection or need for me. I reconnected with the friends I had pushed away, embarrassed by my secret life. They didn't judge, they welcomed me back. Slowly, painstakingly, I began to rebuild. It wasn't a return to the man I was before, he was gone forever. It was the beginning of a new path, one forged in wisdom born from a deep and painful wound. In the end, this journey through deception taught me a lesson of profound importance. It taught me that the most dangerous prisons are the ones we build for ourselves out of fear and loneliness. I was so desperate to fill the void left by my wife's death that I willingly ignored every warning sign, every red flag, because the fantasy Lina was selling was more comforting than my reality. I learned that true strength isn't about being invulnerable, it's about what you do after you've been broken. It's about finding the courage to face the truth no matter how ugly and choosing to fight for your own dignity. My hope now is not for a grand, passionate love, but for a quiet, steady peace. I'm finding joy in small things again, the taste of good coffee, the view from my new balcony, the comfort of an old friendship. I am healing. To anyone watching this who feels lost in their own loneliness, I urge you to be careful. Guard your heart, but don't close it off entirely. Trust your intuition. That quiet voice you try to ignore is usually telling you the truth. And most importantly, know that your own company can be enough. You are enough. It is never, ever too late to start over, to reclaim your story, and to build a new life on a foundation of truth. Thank you for listening to my story. It wasn't easy to share, but I believe in the power of these experiences to help others. If this resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss our next story. Your presence here makes a world of difference.